Imagine a person. He wakes up every morning, goes to work, meets people, and at night falls asleep tired. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside there is an emptiness, a confusion. Why do some people seem confident and successful in their lives, while others, no matter how hard they work, always feel insecure? Nathaniel Branden says the answer is self-esteem. Self-esteem is not just confidence or ego. It is the quality of how you live your life, the base of your decisions, and the foundation of your relationships and career. Part 1. Understanding self-esteem. The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Nathaniel Branden. Imagine a person who looks completely normal from the outside. He has a job, people talk to him, he has a family as well. But when he is alone, a voice keeps running in his mind. I am not enough. He does not take many risks, he cannot fully express himself, and he is always waiting for others' approval. Even after having everything in life, he does not feel inner peace. Nathaniel Branden says, this problem is not about confidence. This problem is about self-esteem. Self-esteem does not simply mean feeling good. It is a deep belief that I can handle life's challenges, and I deserve happiness, respect, and success. When this belief is weak, a person becomes his own biggest enemy. Most people think that self-esteem comes from success. When money comes, confidence will come. When people give respect, self-esteem will be built. But Branden says this way of thinking is backward. If self-esteem is not already there, even after success arrives, a person will remain insecure. That is why we often see that even successful people are empty inside. Self-esteem is not ego. Ego tries to look superior to others, while self-esteem is a peaceful relationship with oneself. Ego needs applause, self-esteem needs truth. Where ego lives on comparison, self-esteem lives on self-respect. Branden says self-esteem is not a gift that you receive in childhood and that lasts a lifetime. It is a practice, the result of small daily decisions, small honesty, and small awareness. That is why two people living in the same environment can still develop very different levels of self-esteem. The biggest damage of low self-esteem is that a person starts doubting his own abilities. Even when opportunities come, he steps back because he feels, maybe I am not worthy of this. Slowly, he stops living his life at full volume. High self-esteem does not mean that a person never falls. It means that even after falling, he does not see himself as worthless. He accepts that a mistake happened, but he does not become the mistake. This difference is the real power of self-esteem. Branden also says something very important. Self-esteem cannot permanently come from external things. Praise, likes, promotions, relationships, all of these can make you feel good for a short time, but if there is no self-respect inside, the moment they disappear, the person feels empty again. That is why the entire focus of part 1 is to explain that self-esteem is not an emotion but a way of living. It depends on how honest you are with yourself, how much you accept your reality, and how much responsibility you take for your life. Nathaniel Branden lays a strong foundation right here. He says, until we understand self-esteem, we cannot build it. And until the foundation is clear, no matter how many motivational tools you use, the building will never be stable. Part 1 is like a mirror. It does not tell you what you can become, instead, it asks, how are you treating yourself? Because the day a person falls in his own eyes, the world's applause loses all meaning. And on this very foundation stand the 6 pillars of self-esteem, which show a path not only to a successful life but to becoming strong from the inside. Chapter 1. What is self-esteem? Imagine a person who looks confident from the outside. He smiles while talking, his work is going reasonably well, and people respect him. But when he is alone at night, a voice echoes in his mind, I am not enough. He doubts his own achievements, cannot forgive his mistakes, and lives in constant fear that people might see his real truth. Nathaniel Branden says, this is not just low confidence, this is low self-esteem. Chapter 1 begins right here, with understanding self-esteem. Branden first makes it clear that self-esteem does not simply mean feeling good. It is not a motivational feeling that comes in the morning and disappears by evening. Self-esteem is a deep inner belief about yourself. According to Branden, self-esteem stands on two things. The first is the feeling that, I can handle life's challenges. And the second is the feeling that, I deserve happiness, respect, and success. When both of these are strong, a person remains internally stable even under external pressure. Most people make a mistake right here. They believe that self-esteem comes from outside, from money, promotions, relationships, or praise from others. But Branden says, if self-esteem were built this way, successful people would never feel insecure. The truth is that if self-esteem is weak inside, external success provides only temporary comfort. Branden also explains the difference between ego and self-esteem here. Ego means trying to show yourself as superior to others. Ego survives on comparison. If someone is below, it feels good. If someone is ahead, there is jealousy. But self-esteem does not run on comparison, it runs on self-respect. A person who trusts himself does not need to put others down. Chapter 1 also explains that self-esteem is not a gift that some people receive more of and others less. It is a practice that every person builds through daily choices. A person who lies to himself, runs away from his reality, and shifts responsibility onto others, his self-esteem slowly breaks down no matter how talented he may be. The most dangerous effect of low self-esteem is that a person starts undervaluing himself. Even when opportunities come, he steps back because he feels that he does not deserve them. He chooses to stay safe, avoids taking risks, and slowly begins to live his life at half strength. High self-esteem does not mean that a person becomes perfect. It means that even with imperfections, he respects himself. He makes mistakes, learns, falls, and gets back up, but he does not see himself as worthless. This self-trust is the real sign of self-esteem. Branden makes a very deep point here. Self-esteem is essential even for survival. Not just physical survival, but psychological survival. A person who does not trust himself breaks first under life's pressure. Chapter 1 is a foundation chapter. It does not give you techniques or shortcuts. It simply places a mirror in front of you and asks, how are you living with yourself? Because until a person rises in his own eyes, rising in the eyes of the world still leaves him empty inside. With this understanding, the book moves forward, where the practical pillars of building self-esteem are explained. But without understanding Chapter 1, everything else remains just words. Chapter 2, the myths about self-esteem. Imagine a person who says, the day I get money, I will become confident. Another says, if people just accept me, then I will be happy with myself. A third thinks, when I become successful, self-esteem will come. All of this sounds logical, but Nathaniel Branden says, these are all myths. The entire focus of Chapter 2 is on why people develop so many misunderstandings about self-esteem. The biggest myth is that self-esteem comes from outside. Society teaches us that achievements, praise, status, and approval are proof of self-worth. That is why we start measuring our value through other people's reactions. Branden says, if self-esteem truly came from outside, then people who are already successful would never feel insecure. But the reality is that the most anxious and insecure people in the world are often the ones who have everything: money, fame, power. Because their self-esteem is not in their own control but in the hands of others. Another myth is that self-esteem means always feeling good. People think that if they ever feel doubt, guilt, or fear, it means their self-esteem is low. Branden says this is wrong. Healthy self-esteem does not mean that negative emotions will never appear. Healthy self-esteem means that when those emotions appear, a person does not hate himself. Then there is another dangerous myth that self-esteem means arrogance or superiority. Because of this, many people are afraid to develop self-esteem because they do not want to become egoistic. Branden makes it clear right here that ego and self-esteem are completely different things. Ego survives by comparing itself to others, while self-esteem lives without comparison. Chapter 2 also explains that self-esteem cannot be built through positive thinking alone. If self-doubt and self-betrayal are running inside, then simply repeating affirmations does nothing. When actions and words do not match, the mind does not believe those words at all. Another myth is that self-esteem is decided in childhood and can never be changed. Branden says the past has an influence, but it is not the final decision. Every person can rebuild their self-esteem through present choices. Self-esteem is a living process, not a fixed destiny. The most important message of this chapter is that until we break these myths, we cannot build self-esteem in the right place. We keep using the wrong tools, seeking praise, chasing approval, comparing ourselves, and then wonder why there is no peace inside us. Branden says self-esteem does not come from shortcuts, nor does it come with any certificate. It is built when we live honestly with reality, take responsibility for our lives, and stop lying to ourselves. Chapter 2 is an eye-opener. It makes us understand that the real problem is not a lack of self-esteem inside us, but a wrong understanding of it. And when understanding becomes clear, the path to change opens on its own. Chapter 3, the importance of self-esteem. Imagine a person who has talent, opportunities, and the ability to work hard. But whenever life places a big decision in front of him, he steps back. He thinks, what if I fail? What will people say? Do I deserve this or not? Slowly, he becomes a spectator of his own life. Nathaniel Branden says, this is not a small problem. It is a direct result of low self-esteem. Chapter 3 explains deeply that self-esteem is not just about feeling good but a necessity for living and surviving. Branden explains that self-esteem is the silent force behind every decision a person makes. A person who trusts himself faces challenges. A person who does not trust himself starts running away from them. That is why self-esteem is not just a tool for success but also the strength to deal with failure. The impact of low self-esteem is not limited only to career. It quietly damages relationships as well. Such a person either becomes overly dependent on others, or always wants to control them. In both cases, the connection becomes weak because when the relationship with oneself is not healthy, a healthy relationship with others cannot be built. Branden says, without self-esteem, a person will either keep seeking approval all the time or will fear rejection so much that he stops speaking the truth altogether. And when speaking the truth stops, slowly one's own identity also begins to fade. High self-esteem does not mean that problems will not come in life. Problems come into everyone's life. The only difference is that a person with strong self-esteem does not turn a problem into proof of his own worth. He says, I have a problem, not, I am the problem. Chapter 3 makes another deep point. Self-esteem also makes a person morally strong. A person who fears falling in his own eyes thinks twice before doing something wrong. When self-esteem is weak, a person either compromises or sells his values, just for acceptance. Branden says here that without self-esteem, even happiness becomes unstable. A little criticism, a small failure, and all happiness collapses. Because when happiness is based on external approval, it remains under external control. One powerful message of this chapter is that self-esteem is not a luxury. It is not only for confident people but necessary for every human being. Just as the body needs food, the mind needs self-respect. Chapter 3 explains that if self-esteem is ignored, other areas of life slowly begin to collapse. Fear in career, insecurity in relationships, confusion in decisions, and a constant emptiness inside. That is why Nathaniel Branden calls self-esteem the foundation of mental health. When the foundation is strong, even life's storms cannot bring the building down. And when the foundation is weak, even a small breeze shakes everything. Chapter 4, the nature of self-esteem. Imagine a person who says, today I'm feeling good, maybe my self-esteem is high, and the very next day when he receives some criticism, he thinks, my self-esteem is finished. Nathaniel Branden says, this is where we misunderstand self-esteem. Self-esteem is not a mood that keeps changing like the weather. It is a state of mind that is built slowly and also declines slowly. The main focus of chapter 4 is to explain the nature of self-esteem. Branden says self-esteem does not simply mean liking yourself. Self-esteem means trusting yourself, your thinking, your judgment, and your ability to handle reality. Self-esteem is built more through actions than through emotions. If a person keeps closing his eyes and running away from the truth every day, then no matter how many positive things he says, he will remain weak inside. And if a person lives even with a little honesty and awareness each day, his self-esteem gradually starts becoming strong. Branden makes a deep point here. The core of self-esteem is self-trust. When a person trusts himself that he will observe, understand, learn, and act, then he does not need every situation to be perfect. He knows that no matter what problem comes, he will face it. Chapter 4 also explains that self-esteem is not static. It is not a fixed personality trait that some people have more of and others have less of. Self-esteem is a dynamic process that is shaped by daily choices. That is why people may look confident in one phase of life and break down in another. Another important point this chapter explains is that self-esteem is not just the result of achievements. If that were the case, anyone who failed would become permanently broken. Healthy self-esteem means that a person can feel his value even without achievements. Branden says when self-esteem is weak, a person begins to distort reality. He either ignores his problems or underestimates his abilities. In both cases, the person moves away from the truth, and moving away from the truth weakens self-esteem even more. One powerful insight of chapter 4 is that self-esteem and consciousness are deeply connected. The more aware a person is of his feelings, actions, and decisions, the healthier his self-esteem becomes. Avoiding awareness gives short-term relief but causes long-term damage. In this chapter, Branden also breaks a myth that self-esteem means being confident all the time. A person with healthy self-esteem also feels doubt and fear, but he does not define his value through those feelings. Chapter 4 ends with a silent realization. Self-esteem is not something we merely feel, but something we live. The way we live is the way we learn to value ourselves. On this understanding, the concept of the 6 pillars comes next, where Branden explains which daily practices make self-esteem strong. Chapter 5, Pillar 5, Living Purposefully. Imagine a person who wakes up every morning, works, and goes to sleep tired in the evening, but the whole day just passes by without any direction. Inside him is an emptiness, a tension that finds no release. Nathaniel Branden says, when the purpose of life is not clear, self-esteem slowly becomes weak. Chapter 5, Living Purposefully, explains that a strong pillar of self-esteem is consciously giving direction to the decisions and actions of your life. Purpose does not only mean big goals, it means aligning your daily actions with meaning. Branden says when a person understands his goals and values, he is able to make decisions easily and avoid unnecessary distractions. When purpose is strong, a person feels confident even in front of challenges because inside him there is an internal guide that says, I am on the right path. This chapter also highlights that living purposefully does not mean living in the future but living in the present with conscious choices. When we are aware that today's actions are the foundation of tomorrow's results, we make responsible and focused decisions. Branden says that without purpose, energy in life becomes scattered, self-doubt increases, and inner satisfaction decreases. When a person performs his actions consciously with purpose, self-esteem becomes strong naturally. Chapter 5 ends with a strong insight. Through purpose, a person becomes the author of his life, not just an actor. And when a person consciously guides his life, inner confidence and fulfillment naturally develop within him. Chapter 6 Pillar 1 Living Consciously. Imagine a person who wakes up every morning, goes to work, talks to people, makes decisions, but in reality he lives less and runs more on autopilot. He thinks less and reacts more. Instead of understanding what is happening, he simply keeps moving according to habit. Nathaniel Branden says, this is where the decline of self-esteem begins. Chapter 6, the first pillar, living consciously, does not simply mean being aware. It means living with your eyes open, seeing reality, whether it is comfortable or uncomfortable. Because self-esteem is not built in darkness, it is built in light. Branden says when we do not live consciously, we slowly lose control of our lives. We ignore our problems, suppress our feelings, and run away from our mistakes. In the short term, this feels easy, but in the long term it sends one message: I am not capable of handling reality. And this message quietly breaks self-esteem. Living consciously does not mean that we must have answers to everything. It means that we are not afraid to ask questions. Why is this happening? What am I feeling here? What will be the result of my choice? When a person stops asking these questions, he becomes a guest in his own life. Branden makes a deep point. Attention is the first step of self-esteem. A person whose attention is weak also has weak self-esteem. Because when we do not pay attention, we do not learn. And when we do not learn, we cannot trust ourselves. This chapter introduces another powerful idea: denial. When we deny reality, we deny ourselves. Avoiding our problems, ignoring our feelings, or running away from responsibility may feel like self-protection, but in reality it is self-betrayal. Living consciously means being present, with your body, your feelings, and your thoughts. When we are present, we make more accurate decisions. And when decisions improve, an inner confidence slowly develops. I can see, I can understand, and I can act. Branden says a person who lives consciously is not perfect. He also makes mistakes, feels confused, and experiences doubt. But the difference is that he does not run away from his mistakes. He looks at them, understands them, and learns from them. And this very process strengthens self-esteem. A silent message of this chapter is: self-esteem is not built only through positive feelings, but through honest awareness. When we choose to live with our eyes open, we send ourselves a signal: I am capable of facing life. By the end of chapter 6, one thing becomes clear: until we learn to live consciously, the rest of the pillars have no meaning. Because a person who is not seeing cannot build anything. Living consciously is the first pillar of self-esteem, because without awareness there is no growth, no self-respect, and no inner strength. Chapter 7, Pillar 2, Self-Acceptance. Imagine a person who tries his best to look confident in front of the world, but when he is alone, a voice keeps running in his mind: you are not enough, you are wrong, you are weak. This voice does not come from outside, it comes from within. Nathaniel Branden says, until a person accepts himself, self-esteem remains just a mask. Chapter 7, Self-Acceptance, is the most emotional pillar of self-esteem. Because this is where we stop fighting with ourselves. Self-acceptance does not mean justifying every mistake we make. It means being willing to see and acknowledge who we are in this moment. Branden says most people run away from their feelings. When anger comes, they deny it. When fear appears, they feel ashamed. When weakness shows up, they start judging themselves. And when we reject our own reality, we are rejecting our own existence. The first step of self-acceptance is letting go of resistance. Stopping the habit of saying, this should not be. When a person tells himself, I am feeling this, and this is true, inner conflict slowly begins to calm down. Branden makes a deep point: self-acceptance is not possible without self-esteem, and self-esteem cannot survive without self-acceptance. When we accept ourselves only when we are perfect, we tie our value to conditions. This chapter also makes it clear that self-acceptance does not mean stagnation. Accepting yourself and improving yourself are not enemies. In fact, until we accept our current reality, we cannot honestly move toward change. Branden says self-rejection creates an internal war. A person spends his energy against himself, trying to silence himself, prove himself, or punish himself. And when energy is wasted this way, self-esteem becomes weak. Self-acceptance means accepting your humanity, acknowledging that you are not perfect, and yet you are worthy of respect. Understanding that making mistakes is not proof of reduced value. One powerful moment in this chapter comes when Branden says, when we do not accept ourselves, we beg others for acceptance. And when we accept ourselves, others' approval becomes a bonus, not a necessity. Chapter 7 ends with a silent truth. Self-esteem is built when we become honest and compassionate with ourselves. When we stop running away from ourselves, we begin to rise in our own eyes. Self-acceptance is a decision, a daily decision to not deny our reality but to stand with it. Chapter 8, Pillar 3, Self-Responsibility. Imagine a person who is always a little unhappy with his life. Work is not going well, the system is bad. Money is less, luck is bad. There are problems in relationships, other people are toxic. Slowly, this becomes a habit, finding the reason for everything outside. Nathaniel Branden says, this is where self-esteem quietly starts to die. Chapter 8, Self-responsibility is the most uncomfortable pillar of self-esteem because this is where excuses end. Self-responsibility does not mean blaming yourself for every mistake. It means, my life's results are connected to my choices. Branden says when a person does not take responsibility, he gives his power to someone else. He says, I am helpless, I had no choice, this is not in my control. And when power goes outside, self-esteem goes with it. Self-responsibility means accepting that my happiness is my responsibility. If I want to learn, I can learn. If I want to set boundaries, I can. If I want to learn from my mistakes, that is also my choice. Branden explains a deep truth. Until a person sees himself as a victim, he cannot respect himself. A victim mindset gives temporary sympathy, but in the long run it steals self-respect. This chapter also makes it clear that self-responsibility does not mean doing everything alone. Asking for help can also be a responsible act if it comes from honesty, not from blame. Branden says when a person consciously owns his life, a silent confidence develops inside him. He knows that every situation will not be perfect, but he also knows that he can respond, not just react. Self-responsibility makes a person mature. It says, I am the author of my life. And when a person starts writing his own story, self-esteem naturally grows. One powerful message of Chapter 8 is, responsibility does not mean burden, it means freedom. Because when you take responsibility, you also take the right to change. This chapter ends with a strong realization. When we let go of excuses, we also let go of the shame attached to those excuses. And when shame reduces, self-esteem finally gets room to breathe. Self-responsibility is the moment when a person can say, this is my life, and I choose to live it consciously. Chapter 9, Pillar 4, Self-Assertiveness. Imagine a person who wants to keep everyone happy. He says, yes, even when inside he feels, no. He wants to express himself but stays silent out of fear that people might feel bad. On the outside he looks calm, but inside he remains angry with himself. Nathaniel Branden says, when a person suppresses his voice, self-esteem slowly starts to suffocate. Chapter 9, Self-Assertiveness, teaches that standing up for yourself is not arrogance, but self-respect. Self-assertiveness does not mean aggression or fighting. It means honestly expressing your thoughts, your feelings, and your needs. Branden says when we repeatedly suppress our truth, we send ourselves a message. What I say is not important. And when we start ignoring ourselves, the world learns to ignore us too. This chapter shows a deep connection between self-assertiveness and identity. When a person does not express himself, he slowly loses his sense of self. He only reacts instead of choosing. And living without choice weakens self-esteem. Branden also says that self-assertiveness does not mean being right all the time. Sometimes you can be wrong and still need to express yourself. Because when you speak up, you validate your own existence. Self-assertiveness teaches boundaries. When a person does not set boundaries, people unknowingly keep crossing his limits. And every time those limits are crossed, the guilt and anger that build up hollow out self-esteem from the inside. Branden says the opposite of self-assertiveness is not silence, but self-betrayal. When you know the truth and still do not speak, you lie to yourself. And that lie slowly turns into an inner voice that says, you do not stand up for yourself. One powerful truth of this chapter is, when you find your voice, you stop fearing others' voices so much. Because you know that you are on your own side. Chapter 9 ends with the realization that self-assertiveness is not possible without self-esteem, and self-esteem is not complete without self-assertiveness. When you stand up for yourself, you rise in your own eyes. Self-assertiveness is not a one-time action, but a daily decision to not silence yourself. Chapter 10, Pillar 5, Living Purposefully. Imagine a person who wakes up every morning, works, gets tired, and goes to sleep, and then the next day is exactly the same. Life is moving, but it is not going anywhere. There is an emptiness inside him. the reason for which he himself cannot clearly understand. Nathaniel Branden says, when there is no direction in life, self-esteem slowly starts to fade. Chapter 10, Living Purposefully, is the pillar of self-esteem that gives life meaning. Purpose does not mean only a big goal or dream. Purpose means aligning your actions with a value, with a direction. Branden says when a person lives without purpose, he wastes time, scatters his energy, and then blames himself. I am undisciplined, I am lazy. But the real problem is not laziness. The real problem is lack of direction. Living purposefully means knowing what I want to achieve, why I want to achieve it, and what I need to do today for it. When goals are clear, decisions become simple. And when decisions become simple, self-doubt reduces. Branden reveals a deep truth. Living without purpose is living in emotional survival mode. A person keeps reacting, according to situations, moods, and people. But when there is purpose, a person responds, according to his values. This chapter also explains that purpose is not only for the future. Purpose also organizes the present. When you know what you are creating, you are able to tolerate today's discomfort as well. Living purposefully strengthens self-esteem because when you consciously give direction to your life, you send yourself the message, I can guide my life. And this belief becomes the foundation of self-respect. Branden says even success without purpose feels hollow. Money may come, recognition may come, but an emptiness remains inside. Because when effort has no meaning, achievement does not satisfy. Chapter 10 ends with the realization that purpose is not something you find in one day. It is a process built through clarity, planning, and commitment. When a person starts living life with purpose, self-esteem naturally grows. Living purposefully means not just existing, but consciously creating something. And when you become a creator, you begin to feel powerful in your own eyes. Chapter 11, Pillar 6, Personal Integrity. Imagine a person who shows one thing to the world, but feels something else when he is alone. He knows what he believes is right, yet many times he goes against it for a little convenience, for a little approval. On the outside everything looks normal, but inside there is a voice that keeps reminding him, you are falling in your own eyes. Nathaniel Branden says, this is where self-esteem quietly breaks. Chapter 11, Personal integrity is the final and deepest pillar of self-esteem. Integrity does not mean only telling the truth, it means living what you believe. When your values and your actions are not aligned, a constant inner tension is created, and that tension slowly hollows out self-respect. Branden says the biggest enemy of self-esteem is hypocrisy, not with others, but with oneself. When a person breaks his principles little by little, each time he sends himself the signal, my word does not carry weight. And when your own word loses weight, trust in yourself also weakens. Personal integrity does not mean perfection. Everyone makes mistakes. The only difference is that a person with integrity does not justify the mistake. He accepts it, corrects it, and moves forward. And this honesty heals self-esteem. In this chapter Branden says something powerful. When you live against your values, you do not even like looking at yourself. That is why many people live in distraction, phones, noise, people, so that they do not have to hear their own inner voice. Personal integrity gives a person an inner anchor. When the world confuses you, when people contradict you, you have a reference point, your values. And when you are aligned with them, you feel strong, no matter what the external result is. Branden says without integrity, all the other pillars become unstable. There may be awareness, there may be acceptance, there may be responsibility, but if a person does not follow his values, self-esteem is not sustainable. Chapter 11 ends with a deep realization. Self-esteem is at its highest when you can say to yourself, I am who I say I am. This feeling does not come from outside, it is built from within. Personal integrity means remaining honest in your own eyes. And when a person rises in his own eyes, the weight of the world's gaze becomes lighter. Chapter 12, Self-esteem and relationships. Imagine two people in a relationship. From the outside, everything looks fine, but deep inside both are missing something. One lives in constant fear. What if they leave me? The other tries to control. If I don't keep this person according to my rules, I'll feel insecure. Nathaniel Branden says, often the problem is not the relationship, but self-esteem. Chapter 12 focuses on explaining how the level of self-esteem directly decides how we love, how we connect, and how we fight. When self-esteem is weak, a relationship does not become a safe space, it becomes a battlefield where we are either constantly trying to prove ourselves or constantly trying to protect ourselves. Branden says a person with low self-esteem measures his value in a relationship through the other person's reactions. If he gets attention, he feels okay. If he senses distance, panic begins. In this way, love turns into dependency, not connection. Similarly, some people handle insecurity through control. They put rules on the other person, become possessive, or emotionally manipulate. Branden says, this is not love, this is fear. And a relationship built on fear can never be stable. A person with healthy self-esteem does not lose his individuality in a relationship. He can be close, but he does not disappear into the other person. He loves, but with his boundaries. That is why his love does not create pressure, it creates space. Chapter 12 also explains how self-esteem affects communication. When self-esteem is strong, a person can express himself clearly and respectfully. When it is weak, there is either silence or explosion. Branden says a relationship becomes toxic when both people put the responsibility for their self-esteem on each other. When we expect the other person to complete us, we place an impossible burden on them. One powerful truth of this chapter is, healthy relationships exist between two whole people, not two half people. When both manage their own value, the relationship becomes a source of growth, not struggle. Chapter 12 ends with the realization that love matures when self-esteem is strong. And when self-esteem is strong, love comes not from fear, but from choice. The quality of a relationship is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. Chapter 13, Self-Esteem and Parenting. Imagine a small child trying something new for the first time. He falls, then gets up, and then tries again. Now imagine the response around him. Someone is scolding him, someone is comparing him, and someone is saying, "You can't do this." Nathaniel Branden says, this is where self-esteem is either built or broken. Chapter 13 focuses on explaining that parenting is not just about controlling or protecting a child but about building trust within him. Branden says children do not become what parents say, they become what parents live. Parenting driven by low self-esteem often comes from fear that the child will fail, fear of what people will say, fear that the future is unsafe. Because of this fear, parents either become too strict or overly protective. In both cases, the child receives one message: the world is dangerous, and I am not capable of handling it. Branden says when parents dismiss a child's feelings, "Stop crying, why are you scared over such a small thing?" the child learns that his inner world is not important. Slowly, he disconnects from his feelings, and this is where self-doubt begins. Healthy parenting does not mean perfect parenting. It means conscious parenting, listening to the child, understanding him, and guiding him with respect. When a child sees that his voice is being heard, he begins to feel valuable. Chapter 13 also explains that discipline and punishment are not the same. Discipline means teaching, punishment means frightening. When a child is controlled only through fear, he either becomes rebellious or grows into a fearful adult. Branden shares a deep truth: parents transmit their own self-esteem more than they teach self-esteem. If a parent is insecure and unhappy with himself, no matter how many positive words he says, the child feels that energy. One powerful message of this chapter is that a child should experience unconditional worth. When a child feels, "I am valuable simply because I exist," he becomes strong enough to face the world. Chapter 13 ends with an emotional realization: parenting is not just a responsibility, it is an opportunity. An opportunity to place the foundation inside a human being on which he will build his entire life. Self-esteem is not only taught, it is demonstrated through the way we live. Chapter 14, Self-Esteem in Education. Imagine a classroom. The teacher is writing on the board, children are sitting on the benches. Some students are raising their hands, while others sit quietly with their heads down. Those who are silent are not useless, they are just scared. Not scared of a wrong answer, but of being misunderstood. Nathaniel Branden says, the biggest job of education is not giving marks, but building self-esteem. Chapter 14 focuses on showing how the approach of schools and the education system either strengthens a child's self-worth or slowly breaks it down. When learning is connected only to performance and comparison, the child becomes more afraid of failing than excited about learning. Branden says when a child is appreciated only for results, marks, rank, trophies, he learns that his value is conditional. And when the condition breaks, confidence breaks with it. The real purpose of education is to keep curiosity alive. But when mistakes are connected with shame, the child does not stop making mistakes, he stops trying. And when trying stops, self-esteem quietly collapses. Chapter 14 also shows that a teacher's attitude is more powerful than any textbook. A teacher who speaks with respect and encourages questions turns the classroom into a safe space. And confidence grows only in a safe space. Branden says children should not only be taught answers, but how to think. When a child feels, "My thinking matters," self-trust begins to develop. One deep message of this chapter is that education is not only knowledge transfer, it is also identity formation. If a child repeatedly hears that he is slow, weak, or average, he begins to turn those labels into his identity. Chapter 14 ends with a hopeful thought: when education is built on curiosity, respect, and encouragement, every child can become a confident learner. Self-esteem is not written in the syllabus, but it is built or damaged in every class. Good education does not only teach a child subjects, it teaches him to believe in himself. Chapter 15, Self-Esteem in the Workplace. Imagine an office. Some people speak openly in meetings, share ideas, while others stay silent even though they know the answers. Some people step forward to take credit, while others work hard yet remain invisible. Nathaniel Branden says, often this is not a difference in talent but a difference in self-esteem. Chapter 15 shows that in the workplace, self-esteem is not limited to confidence alone. It directly affects performance, leadership, and career growth. When self-esteem is weak, a person either underperforms or overworks just to prove himself. Branden says an employee with low self-esteem takes criticism as a personal attack. Even small feedback becomes proof. I am not capable. Because of this, he either becomes defensive or stops taking risks. Similarly, self-esteem is just as important for managers and leaders. A leader with weak self-esteem micromanages, controls, and feels insecure about others' growth. A leader with strong self-esteem empowers, trusts, and allows talent to grow. Chapter 15 also explains that workplace culture has a deep impact on self-esteem. When the environment is fear-based, only targets, pressure, and blame, people survive, they do not thrive. And when people only survive, creativity and ownership die. Branden says a healthy workplace is one where people can learn from mistakes without humiliation, where feedback is for growth, not punishment. In such environments, people work at their best because they feel safe. One powerful message of this chapter is, career success cannot replace self-esteem. Promotions, salary, and titles give a temporary boost, but without inner self-respect they feel hollow. Chapter 15 ends with the realization that when a person defines his value only by his job role, his identity shakes the moment the job changes. But when self-esteem is strong, the job becomes just a platform, not an identity. In the workplace, the most powerful asset is not skill, it is self-trust. Chapter 16, Self-Esteem and Psychotherapy. Imagine a person sitting in a therapy room. He is talking about his problems, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, a feeling of emptiness. But behind his words, one line is hidden: I don't trust myself. Nathaniel Branden says, whatever the name of the problem, its root is often self-esteem. Chapter 16 explains that the job of psychotherapy is not just to reduce pain but to reconnect a person with his inner strength. The real goal of therapy is not for the therapist to give answers, but for the client to find his own answers. Branden says when self-esteem is weak, a person begins to doubt his own feelings. He thinks, I am overreacting, my feelings are wrong. The first job of therapy is to break this doubt, to help the client feel that his inner experience is valid. This chapter brings a deep insight. Therapy works only when the client learns to take responsibility. If therapy only reinforces the victim story, healing does not happen. When a person begins to understand his choices and reactions, he gains the power to change. Branden also says the therapist's attitude is extremely important in building self-esteem. If the therapist speaks as an authority, judges the client, or makes the client dependent, self-esteem does not heal. Therapy should make a person stronger, not dependent. Chapter 16 explains that self-esteem is not a symptom, but a foundation. When the foundation is weak, issues like anxiety, depression, and addiction surface. And when the foundation becomes strong, those issues naturally become manageable. Branden says real therapy means increasing consciousness, seeing and understanding patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior. When a person sees his patterns, he separates from them. And that is where healing begins. One powerful truth of this chapter is, therapy's success does not depend on the therapist, but on the client's self-responsibility. When the client accepts, my life is my responsibility, therapy becomes a turning point. Chapter 16 ends with this insight. Therapy is a tool, not the solution. The real work must be done by the person himself, living consciously, accepting himself, taking responsibility, and living with integrity. Psychotherapy becomes successful when it restores self-esteem, not when it only suppresses pain. Chapter 17, Final Integration and Conclusion.